Hey everybody, I've really missed you guys during this crisis. I can't believe we're going into week 9 of school closures. Um, that if you had told us back in March that that's how long we would be out of school, I know none of us would have believed it. But the truth is that the crisis that we're living through is really stressful and it's really hard on our mental health. And I know how hard you guys are working, and I know how hard you are trying to take care of your students and take care of parents and plan lessons and make this educational experience meaningful for your kids. But I want to make sure that you guys are taking care of yourselves too. So my hope is to be able to create a series of these kind of mental health minutes just to offer a check-in and maybe point to some strategies or things that we can be doing to help each other as we navigate through this. So what I thought I would use for a framework to talk about that is social and emotional learning, because we all use SEL skills and strategies in our work with kids. And I think it's a good launching point to start a conversation about mental health with us as teachers, that we can all benefit from using those SEL skills too. So the first step in that, if we're talking about social and emotional learning, is to be able to name the feeling. So as you are navigating through these uncharted waters, what is your emotional experience? What's happening with you emotionally? And I think we tend to think of that answer to that question when somebody says, hey, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? We tend to think in really broad brushstrokes. We tend to answer with things like, I'm fine, I'm angry, I'm stressed, having a hard day. And all of those things may be true, but there's a lot more layers to that, really. So ask yourself some follow-up questions when you are sitting down and really trying to think about what is happening with me emotionally right now. So typically emotions don't just happen one at a time. There's probably multiple emotions that you're experiencing at a time. So name those and then try to figure out what the predominant emotion actually is. So what's the one feeling out of all of those that's standing out for you at that moment? And maybe even go a little bit deeper and see if you can try to figure out when that feeling started for you, or what was happening when that feeling began, or how long that feeling has been going on for you. Because what we can do when we can name that feeling is to recognize that emotions at the end of the day, they're just information. It's information for us to be able to do a check-in about how we are, how's our mental health, how's our emotional health. The important thing when we name the feeling, though, is not to judge it, because we are often very quick to say, well, I'm really stressed today, or I'm really upset today, but I shouldn't feel that way because, other people are struggling more than I am. Or I shouldn't feel that way because I know I have a lot to be grateful for. And that's true too, but when we add that layer of judgment onto what our emotional experience is, it tends to diminish the emotions that we're having. So notice the feeling, name the feeling, but don't judge it. You don't need to give a story to it. You don't need to add this layer of I should or feeling guilty about the way that you're feeling. It's just the way that you're feeling. And that's a thing that's happening to you in this moment. So when we can name the feeling, if we can identify where it's coming from, if we can talk a little bit about what's happening in our lives or what's not happening in our lives that's contributing to that emotion, then the idea would be that hopefully those emotions can point us to some strategies or to some things that we can do to cope with that feeling or cope with it a little bit differently. So just to share kind of a personal story of all of the rainbow of emotions that I've been experiencing since we closed schools in March, one that really started to surface for me that was really problematic was this extreme irritability. I found that when people would ask me small questions, perfectly reasonable questions, perfectly kind, nothing wrong with the requests. But when people would ask me things, I found myself being very angry and kind of irrationally irritable with them. And that's not typically how I experience life. That was like kind of a departure for me from my usual self. So the first thing for me was to obviously to name that emotion and to be able to label that and say, well, I'm experiencing some extreme irritability. And if any of you have seen me at a meal site or volunteered with me recently and asked, I may have actually given that answer to say, I'm experiencing some extreme irritability. And I sat with that for a while and I talked about it quite a bit. And doing that really helped me to understand that it wasn't just about being irritable, it was trying to figure out about why that was happening. And really unpacking that, it helped me to recognize how much anxiety I have about the situation that we're in. There's so much that's happening that we don't know. I don't have answers to. I don't know how to help people. And that's a scary feeling. And this other level of resentment, and that was very real for me too, is that I think all of us are doing jobs that we were not necessarily trained to do or prepared to do. And there was this part of me that was feeling very angry about our circumstances, um, and just feeling a level of resentment, and also not knowing when it was going to end. And so all of those things, just being able to recognize them was very helpful for me, just to be able to name it. But the next step in that was also really important, which was, okay, what do those experiences tell me I need to do differently? And being able to talk about the extreme irritability helped me to adopt some different strategies in my day-to-day life so that I didn't have that kind of extreme sort of response. One of them was around creating better boundaries between work and home life, which is probably the biggest issue I think that people are struggling with now, is there's no distinction between my work life and what happens at home. It's all blurred together. And we're all taking phone calls at weird hours, and we're answering texts first thing in the morning, and we're answering texts at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm at the grocery store and somebody's calling me, and there's no boundaries between that. So what I found that I needed to do, as best as I was able to do, it's not perfect, but as best as I was able to do, to create some different boundaries for me between work and home. To make sure that I had definite times when I shut off the computer and the phone and I didn't look at it. I will challenge all of you to do the same, because even though a text may come in at 6:30 in the morning or 10:30 at night, it doesn't mean it needs an answer right that moment. So really to be mindful about the boundaries that we create. And the other thing that it pointed the need for me to do was to be better about my own physical self-care. So I've started taking some very long walks, and listening to books and really tuning out everything else that's happening. So that's just been a very physical kind of outlet for some of that anger and irritability that I was having. So I can notice when those feelings are coming up. That's a clue to me that I need to do something different. I need to get out, I need to get moving, and I need to step away from work for a little while. So you kind of get a sense of how that process kind of fits together. Naming the feeling, sitting with it for a little bit, figuring it out, and then maybe coming up with some different ways to cope with it. I am working on putting together some resources for you guys that I will hopefully be able to put up on a Padlet that I can put up on our Frog page so that you guys can take a look at them. Let's see if I can share that with you. So this is just some coping articles about coping, blogs, a couple other resources. If you come across anything, please send me links because I would love to share it on here. I will keep adding to this as well. I think it's really important just to keep the conversation going. And then the most important thing that I can say to you guys is that I think we all really struggle with feeling like we're not doing enough or that what we're doing isn't good. And I need for all of you to know that you are doing great. And it's not perfect and it's not pretty, but we're doing our best, and our best is good enough. So thank you guys for all of your hard work. Please reach out to me if you would like to send an email or a text. If you just need to chat a little bit about what's going on, I'm available to you and I'm happy to have those conversations. But I really want you guys to take care of yourselves through this because this stuff is hard. But you guys are doing fantastic. So look forward to seeing you in person really soon. Until then, take care of yourselves. See you soon.